So welcome, friends. We're having a lunch and learn today in August on the PP Powered by Action platform. And it's really a great honor and thrill to introduce Britt Duque. She's the founder of and lead functional nutrition and lifestyle professional with Nourishing Solutions. She lives in Austin, Texas. She has a proven record of building wellness teams, designing nutrition education program, and coaching individuals to meet their wellness goals. She works to educate individuals and groups about the importance of gut health and lifestyle choices, as well as the gut's pronounced tie to our country's continued mental health decline. Britt is particularly passionate about helping others benefit from targeted nutrition and lifestyle intervention. Her side hobbies include water skiing and participating in most sports with her kids and husband, lifting weights, gardening, yoga, meditation, cooking, traveling, reading, and exploring new places with their two sweet pups. So warm welcome to Britt. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for friends on the call and for folks who watch this on review later. Take it away, Britt.
Thank you so much, Ed. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So as Ed said, I'm Britt Duque. I'm the founder of Nourish Solutions and a functional nutrition practitioner. I work on unraveling chronic gut health challenges, whether that's for clients with metabolic issues, athletes looking to perform more optimally, or dealing with depression and anxiety type clients. These uniquely different types of clients each have different demands on their body systems. And my job as a practitioner is to help them reach their wellness goals while providing a bit of education that allows the client to take notice of differences they feel and realize enough benefit to make permanent change. Okay, so if you go to the next slide. All that to say, learning from, my clients helped me arrive at this topic. I've always had an interest in sleep, but not long after starting my practice, I realized that my success as a nutrition professional depended heavily on my ability to be able to have knowledge in three other pillars of health, which I broadly define as exercise and movement, stress and emotional well-being, and sleep. Many times the root of a nutritional issue is embedded in the complexity of overlapping foundational health symptoms and systems. So today we're going to explore sleep to better understand the vital importance it has on our own health and hopefully to help our clients and patients too. I'd like to start off with asking, why is sleep necessary? What should normal sleep patterns look like? How does nutrition affect sleep? And how does sleep affect nutrition? And what can we do to improve our sleep? I also offer this disclaimer that I'm not a sleep expert, but really enjoy studying sleep and would encourage each of you, if you haven't read Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, to do so. It's a beautiful tool and one that really gets to the bottom of a lot of interesting bits about sleep. Also, sleepfoundation.org offers great information, and Sleepline as well. The next slide, please. Okay. So in general, I think that our society has a lot of apathy towards sleep. And, in my own life, I can think of situations where, like growing up, I grew up on a ranch, and sleep in the morning was not a luxury we got to have. We had to get up and get going. If you were sleeping in, you were lazy and you were, not doing your job on the farm. And then going off to school, you can imagine that, your routine changes quite a lot. You've got to stay up because you've got to cram for those exams. This is the time that everybody else is doing their studying. So getting into that routine of figuring out how should I be sleeping was a big one for me. And going into a married life where my husband slept a completely different routine than mine, you really had to kind of talk through that or figure that out for yourself. So I think in general, our society doesn't really put any stake in sleep, or not much stake in sleep yet, because we really don't educate anybody about why we need to be sleeping. I think that stems from a lack of understanding of the gravity of sleeping or not sleeping, and a lack of education on why we need to get a good night's rest. So from our evolutionary past, we now have a world of 24/7 activity. We can hop on a red-eye flight to Tokyo. We can binge watch our favorite Netflix show. We can go dancing at a club downtown. We can work a night shift, or we can walk on the streets at midnight because we have lit streets and electricity that no longer preclude us from having activity during daytime hours only. Only in the very recent history have we begun to understand the profound impacts on interruptions to our sleep, to our natural circadian rhythm, rather, in response to light and darkness, having, all sorts of important forces over our body's reaction to sleep. So simply said, a lack of sleep increases all-cause mortality across the board. And you'll see on this slide, that this is a Matthew Walker quote, that the shorter your sleep, the shorter your health, the shorter your life. And so routinely sleeping, these are some of the quotes from his book, routinely sleeping 6 to 7 hours a night, less than 6 to 7 hours a night, wreck your immune system and more than double your chances of getting cancer. Insufficient sleep also plays a huge role in whether or not we'll get Alzheimer's disease. Blood sugar levels are profoundly impacted by shortened nights of sleep, which we can see in our clinical practices day to day. And it's been shown that in less than a week's time of shortened nights of sleep, we could be classified as pre-diabetic. Shortening your night of sleep increases your likelihood of coronary heart disease, blocked and inelastic arteries, and congestive heart failure. Sleep disruption contributes, and some say entirely contributes, to all psychiatric conditions, including depression, anxiety, and suicidality. Next slide, please. Okay. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the sleep architecture portion of sleep. And so we have basically 4 different stages of sleep. We have the non-rapid eye movement and the rapid eye movement, and that's broken down into the 4 different stages. So we have 3 that are in the non-rapid eye movement, and then the rapid eye movement stage. So in stage 1, I like to have my clients, I guess, across the board wear a tracking device of some sort to track their sleep. So an Oura Ring, a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, a Whoop strap, something to give a little bit of indication on what the sleep patterns are. And if they don't have one of those things, then we do our best. But it's nice to have that data, even if only for a short period of time, in order to get some feedback and get a better understanding of whether or not they're reaching optimal sleep in each of these stages. So I don't want it to be something that's long-term, but it is something that's a useful tool in the short term. So in stage 1, we're just drifting off to sleep. We're starting to kind of get a better idea of, jump into our more rested night of sleep. In stage 2, we're our body temperature is dropping, and you need to drop your body temperature between 2 and 3 degrees in order to initiate sleep. And then stage 3 is when we start to get our deepest sleep of the night. So light sleep in stages 1 and 2, and in stage 3, we're getting deep kind of recuperative, restorative sleep. And then finally, we cycle into our REM sleep, where we're dreaming more, we're doing more of the processing of the day before, and we are getting rapid eye movement. So the function of the body actually changes somewhat, where we're in more of a wakefulness state almost when we're dreaming, but our body's completely paralyzed. Okay, other than our eye movement. Timing of the sleep cycles, the earlier part of the night, you're getting more of the stage 3 sleep. So in the early portion of the night, when we're going in these 90 to 120 minute sleep cycles that start with stage 1 and cycle through to the REM sleep, in the early portion of the evening, you're actually getting more of the stage 3 sleep, where your body's tissues, that slow wave sleep, where your body's tissues are regenerating, where the cells are being cleaned. That's happening on the earlier portion of your night. And then as we cycle towards the later morning hours, we start to get more of the REM sleep. So more of the dreaming, more of the memory consolidation, emotional processing, brain development, and preparation for wakefulness. So you might think about that in terms of getting on a flight at 3 a.m. or getting up to go to a flight at 3 a.m., how much you're trading off in the way of your REM sleep in order to get up and get going. Next slide, please. Okay. So graphically, this reviews our sleep architecture somewhat, and you can see that we're in that N1 sleep just for a short period of time. It's a smaller window of just between 1 and 10 minutes. And then we transition into the N2 sleep, and that N2 sleep is the longest sleep we have throughout the night. And there are some spikes in, your sleep spindles during the night, which is just on the encephalograph. You can see a little bit of a higher frequency wave, which are the sleep spindles. And then into N3, where you're going to get about a little under a quarter of your sleep, and then your REM sleep, which is about a quarter of your sleep. So I'd like to give a couple of client examples on kind of why these things are a little bit important. I commonly see clients who are calorically restricted. We'll say a woman who's, eating about 700 calories a day. And I've learned that this restriction causes a reduction in the slow wave sleep, or the non-REM 3 sleep, which or where more of the growth hormone is produced than any other time of the evening. And I think this makes sense physiologically, because that from an adaptive perspective, and in a catabolic state, the body isn't producing much hormone to make new tissue. However, on the flip side, we need that same growth hormone for many other things like bone mineral density, decreasing fat mass, improving lean body mass, and overall anti-aging. So if the calorie restriction is, I would say, under 1,500 calories for a woman, that slow wave sleep is going to be decreased, and they're not likely going to be getting some of the benefits that they should be getting from their growth hormone. So, from slow wave sleep. So both are going the other direction. And another common issue that I see often in practice is wakefulness because of a drop in blood sugar. And I honestly think that this is one of the bigger things that's happening, with our sleep and as a society, just because we aren't eating the whole foods diet that we need to be. So blood sugar regulation makes a huge difference in our cognitive performance, our emotional regulation, and our overall health. The body sees this as an emergency and works quickly to add sugar to the blood and get ourselves back into homeostasis. So you've probably heard someone say that they wake up at 3 a.m. every morning and they don't know why. Well, our neurotransmitters in our brain require somewhat stable blood sugar throughout the day and night in order to be produced and released at appropriate times. So dopamine, serotonin, GABA are all happy and motivation or drive neurotransmitters. But when blood sugar dips at 3 a.m. because the person ate a junky dinner at 7 p.m., the body, in an effort to regain balance, releases cortisol and adrenaline in order to stabilize blood sugar. Those two hormones are responsible as well for waking us up in the morning. So at 3 a.m., you're suddenly out of your sleep rhythm cycle, and things are dysregulated for your neurotransmitters. And from then on, next slide, please. Okay. So how do we balance blood sugar throughout the day and stabilize blood sugar into the night? And what are the top nutrients to help us rest our best? In order to maintain steady blood sugar, we should be eating whole foods. Typically, I like to suggest a baseline for my clients that looks like approximately a half of a plate of non-starchy veggies, which could be your greens. I like to have a variety of different options. Anything basically above the ground is fair game. And then up to about a quarter of the plate should be a complex carb, squash, sweet potato, beet, yam, and then the other quarter of a protein. In addition, I'm on the lookout for common nutrient depletions that can lead to sleep issues. So things that are mentioned here, like melatonin. Melatonin is one that is derived from tryptophan. Sorry, having trouble seeing my own slide. Okay. And so it's an amino acid precursor to melatonin, that tryptophan is. And if you're eating a whole foods diet, oftentimes melatonin is, it is kind of a baseline for most of the foods in a whole foods diet, which is why there's speculation that the Mediterranean diet is one that helps so much with boosting melatonin. And interestingly, they found that the highest amounts of melatonin in milk are found in cows that are milked at night, which makes sense. And then on to omega-3s. Your omega-3s are coming from your fatty fishes. And you'll notice that many of these nutrients are nutrients that we commonly see depleted in clients. So no surprise that sleep is also an issue for so many. And then iron. Back to omega-3s. Your fatty fishes, and then it's helping with regulation of the circadian timing and reduce inflammation to promote better sleep. So in general, your omega-3s, the reduction of inflammation and things are going to lead to a better night of rest. And then on to iron. Anemia is actually a fairly large issue for sleep. It's interesting because a lot of studies have recently been done on attention deficit disorder and anemia as well. Anemia is important in the, iron is important in the transport of oxygen to the cells. And without it, we're also having issues with sleeping. The brain uses iron during the night, and it's important that these sleep disturbances are shorter nights, short sleep, and more wakings is oftentimes part of the iron deficiency. And also, if your client has restless leg syndrome, you'll see more of the iron deficiency. So 68% of those with anemia had sleep problems and neuromuscular issues, and 24% suffered from restless leg syndrome in a study done in Turkey. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. Okay, vitamin D. Vitamin D is, our sunshine vitamin, and the one that so many of us are depleted in. Vitamin D is known as the circadian pacemaker and keeps our sleep-wake cycles aligned and working. When you're deficient in vitamin D, you get poor sleep, fewer hours of sleep, and just general daytime drowsiness. Those with lower levels of vitamin D have both poor quality and quantity of rest. And vitamin D is also associated with an increase in risk of sleep apnea. Increasing vitamin D levels via sunlight is best done in the early morning hours with exposure to natural sunlight. And interestingly, vitamin D receptors are most prominently on the neck and upper torso, as well as in the eyes. So they say to remove your sunglasses when you're going outside and stay out in the sunlight for 20 to 30 minutes in sunlight. So exposure on your legs alone won't be enough because the receptors are largely on the upper body, which makes some sense evolutionarily. Okay, and then magnesium improves slow wave sleep, which, as we said prior, helps with rest and recovery. So key to immune health and repair of muscles and other tissues. Magnesium is particularly high in pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, cashews, peanuts, almonds, spinach, edamame, black beans, yogurt, and bananas. And 48% of Americans get too little magnesium. We just don't put it back into the soils. And magnesium in general has a calming effect. It relaxes our muscles. It also calms us. So it takes care of the anxiety portion of, going to sleep. So a little magnesium at night before rest can be helpful. And B vitamins, just in general, B vitamins can actually be talked about both ways. They can keep you up at night if you take a B complex and then try to go to sleep. It might be a little too energizing for you. But there are specific portions of the B vitamin that are helpful. They enable the body to regulate your sleep schedule. They help us to feel sleepy and alert at the correct times when taken at the right times. So B vitamins are essential building blocks for both serotonin and melatonin. B vitamins regulate tryptophan, which makes serotonin and melatonin. And B12 in particular is said to have a strong connection with restless leg syndrome. Next slide, please. Okay. So here are some common foods that a lot of our clients, or my clients at least, are a lot of Americans are taking in and noticing the effects on their sleep. So caffeine works as a blocker in the receptors in the brain. It connects to the receptor and blocks the adenosine that's coming in. And adenosine is a hormone that comes in gradually throughout the day. The more adenosine you have in your system, the more drowsy you begin to feel. So it starts early off, you're feeling pretty awake. And then as the day continues on, more and more adenosine hits those receptors, and you start to feel more ready to go to sleep. So caffeine blocks the adenosine receptor, and the adenosine is still sitting there waiting to attach to the receptor. And then once the caffeine kind of hits its half-life and starts to fade, then the adenosine rushes in and hits those receptors. And that's kind of where that caffeine crash comes in. And then alcohol, that's a common one. That's, an issue for a lot of people. Want to just kind of unwind with a glass of wine or a beer. But you'll notice that in general, you feel like you don't get as good a night of sleep. You might feel like you go to sleep well, but you usually wake up, and it makes some disturbances in the circadian rhythm and causes a shorter sleep duration overall, increasing breathing related events like snoring and low oxygenation saturation in people with breathing issues. And sugar, that's back to the blood sugar regulation issue. So a lot of people don't realize they have a blood sugar issue, and it's only through talking to them about what they're eating and why those things, or how those things are transported in the body, how they're broken down, and what kinds of crashes they're going to have in the middle of the night with higher blood sugar dropping off, and the same kind of thing with the cortisol and adrenaline coming in. And then highly processed food. I think all of us have had, a greasy meal or a heavy meal and felt really awful and like it's disrupted our sleep during the night. So avoiding those kinds of meals. And then the last one, interestingly, is nightshades. Nightshades tend to be a problem for some. It's the solanine in nightshades that can actually interfere with sleep for those that have a sensitivity to nightshades. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we go about improving our night of sleep? In general, there's a lot of different things that interrupt our sleep. So of course, there's a lot of different answers on how to improve our sleep. But the three top ones from different studies are to be sure that when you're going to bed, your room is nice and cool, because we have to get into that first, or well, it's into actually the non-REM 2 sleep, where our body temperature starts to drop. That's a 2 to 3 degree Fahrenheit temperature drop for the body. So taking a warm bath brings the blood to the surface of the skin and removes heat from the body, which allows us to fall asleep more quickly. So they say to set your thermostat somewhere between 65 and 67 degrees in order to get that optimal cool bedroom so that you can rest well. Dark room, thing number 2. Having a nice dark room, whether or not that's with, you want to either use blinds, blackout blinds, or use a sleep mask. And then also getting rid of all the ambient light, making sure your cell phones and other devices are out of your bedroom, and leaving your bedroom only for sleeping. Making sure that any lights from alarm clocks or anything additional that might be around your room are turned off or taken away. And then finally, because I guess to go on with that because when you're interrupted with those lights, the eyelids are extremely sensitive to daylight, and that does interrupt your sleep cycle and make you more wakeful during the night. And finally, routine. Actually, they've found that bedtime routine is almost more important than length of sleep they going to bed at the same time each day and waking up at the same time each morning make for a better night of rest. And so trying to get that optimal number of hours for adults, that's between 7 and 9 hours. And for teens, that's between 8 and 10 hours. Most babies need 14 to 17 hours. So getting in a sleep routine and having that routine not be disrupted by staying up later or by doing anything outside of that routine. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. I welcome your questions. Thank you.
That was great, Britt.
Thank you. I'm sorry it was a little disjointed. I had my slides on one side and couldn't see all of it. So,
it's been one of those days, but I guess really it's common for older people to have sleep disturbance.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's a combination of factors and if it's something they should stress over, because obviously if you're not sleeping and you're stressing in the middle of the night, you're adding to your cortisol and other kind of, inflammatory hormones. But, and also people who get up to pee, it's not uncommon as we get older. Just how to adapt to those sort of common phenomena.
Right. Well, I think, getting up to pee, it's interesting because there's a lot of talk about that always. And I do think that, certainly that's a piece of it, but there's a lot of talk that is a lot of that is blood sugar regulation, and more of a blood sugar regulation issue, that you should be able to sleep through the night. And so I think part of that is just investigating for yourself and figuring out how much you should be drinking going into, going to bed, taking your supplements and things like that at an appropriate time where you're not having to down a lot of liquid before you go to bed. And then, testing out theories on whether or not you're getting enough, whether or not you're, eating appropriately in order to satiate yourself and make sure that you're getting through a full night.
So just to carry on with that, there are people who are doing intermittent fasting. And so as such, they're eating in a shorter window and then having a longer period of time when they're not eating. And then the question is how much hydration in the evening, because I think for people who are trying not to get up to urinate, they stop drinking water at night, which may work against them.
Correct.
And the other thing is with a lower blood sugar at night, because there's less nutrient coming through, is it smart to either eat a little bit before bed or eat a little bit in the middle of the night if someone is just really wired and unable to fall back to sleep easily?
Right. I have tested that one out with clients a little bit, and typically when I see somebody who I suspect maybe they've been trying to do keto or something like that, where they're not necessarily they seem to be having some sleep disruption types of issues, we'll test it out with having them take a handful of nuts or something like that before bedtime and see if we don't improve that sleep quality through the night. And maybe add in a little bit of carb at dinner time so that they're able to rest a bit more and not break that, that slow wave sleep cycle.
I agree, because I think what you said in the beginning is something we all have to remember, is not being able to sleep well is going to create more disturbance and even morbidity. And so you're not able to go 16 hours without eating. It's not the end of the world.
Right.
If getting the proper munch before bed or in the night allows you to get into deeper sleep states. Because I just think
Correct.
people get caught up in, doing things according to, the way it should be rather than the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, how people hang out at 3:00 in the morning is an interesting phenomenon.
Yes,
It
that's
is
for
a
sure.
nice time to meditate, to pray, to just reflect, just to be, and to work on really being in a parasympathetic mode.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what sleep's about, is getting out of a sympathetic driven mode, which is a stress mode. But if one triggers a sympathetic mode in the middle of the night, they wake up and they're wired and they're alert, or they had bad dreams, or, and then it's like, wait a minute, calm down, reflect,
Yes, correct.
relax, do a practice of one sort.
Right. And then on the other side of that, Ed, are people who tend to snack all the way into the night.
Uh-huh.
And, then they have a full belly and they're not sleeping as well, or not getting as much out of sleep as they should, because their body needs then to take those resources that would be used otherwise and digest that food. So it's kind of walking that fine balance of which way do we go? Do we, and being attuned to your body, your symptoms, and kind of figuring that out on an individual basis.
No, that's great. Another one is, can meditating when awake during the night help replace or sort of add to sleep?
It's interesting because I don't know about meditation for certain, but I do know that, they say that napping wise, you want to keep that kind of a 20 to 30 minute nap for most people. Otherwise, it starts to interrupt your sleep pattern at night. But I know that there's a lot of people out there that need to nap because they only have a certain window during the time, during the night to sleep. And so they do take a nap. So I think again, maybe it's on a case by case basis.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, what you said is important, that if people eat too much in the evening, it's going to compromise their sleep. If they eat too little, it's going to compromise their sleep. Mm-hmm. If they have too much stimulus too late at night, it's going to compromise their sleep. So for most people, it's power down at a certain hour.
Right.
And then it's maybe 1, 2, 3 hours before bed. So we have type 1, type 2 sleep disturbance. Mm-hmm. Type 1 is I can't get to sleep, and type 2 is I can't stay asleep. And then there's type 3, which is all the above and then some.
Yes.
Do you have any guidelines for any of those, getting to sleep, staying to sleep, having nighttime disturbances, which could even be bad dreams?
Right. Yeah. I've done just a little bit of work with a couple of clients who have a depression, type issues, and typically getting to sleep. What we've done, and it seems to work well, is have them go outside early in the morning and make sure they're getting that circadian cue of sunlight in their eyes for a certain amount of time. And then making sure that you're kind of unwinding in the evening, you're powering down things with plenty of time. Actually, I think a couple of hours prior to bedtime. They'll say at least an hour, but I think a couple of hours is appropriate for teenagers and things of those sort. You want to get that blue light out of your eyes and start working on, what do we need to do? And then, kind of getting your body to down regulate is what I'm saying. And then also oftentimes for those clients, it's also important to maybe add 5-HTP or something along those lines, get some supplementation in there that allows them to start to get more melatonin, and so that their body can, fall asleep and start to regulate a little bit more while the circadian rhythm is still a little off. Getting back to sleep, is more difficult, I think. Typically because other things flood in. You have anxiety issues sometimes that are coming in, or somebody that's in pain, or somebody that's hungry, their blood sugar's off. So it's on a very, case by case basis where you kind of need to jump in and figure out what's going on, what's keeping them up, and whether or not that's something that's something that can be resolved, or something that they need to, maybe go to bed at night writing things in a journal in order to get it kind of out and someplace else on the side, rather than going around in their brain over and over again. But then maybe removing them from the bed, if it ends up being, something that's kept them awake for, they say, longer than 10 to 20 minutes, you need to get up and go to a different room and do something that's relaxing. So get up and meditate, or get up and, read a book, do something that's calm with low light, that hopefully will help you to get back into that cycle, because it's probably not until that next 90 minutes that you're going to be ready to jump back on the bandwagon to get back into bed.
That's great. A couple things to broaden it a little bit is that people do have pain, and pain does really, make it difficult to rest, relax, be happy. And some pain is something we live with, and some pain is managed through nutrients or CBD or medication. So, in terms of a range of pain, support, helping people recover. So I think sometimes doctors want to take the pain away, but not deal with the cause of the pain.
Right.
A painkiller, I got no pain, but then again, there's damage, and there's some neurological or physiological, musculoskeletal damage. So I think, looking at this holistically about how is the, how's this being healed? How is the areas of disturbance being supported towards recovery?
Yeah, absolutely.
But, the two things that come to mind are kind of how helpful or detrimental is a over-the-counter sleep aid, Tylenol PM, Ambien, sometimes Xanax, things like that, at low doses, in combination with melatonin, tryptophan, 5-HTP, because people try things. We know that the people we see have tried most everything, and they go, I'm still not getting the result.
Correct. Yeah.
So for some people, they've tried none of these, and they try some of these the natural ways, and they get results, and that's really cool. But there is this, people that I see, you see, we see, that are still disturbed, and then they're, getting kind of impatient or irritable, which is adding to their difficulty. So any comments just on sort of the combination of lightweight medical, over-the-counter, natural, along with lifestyle practices, which you have mentioned nice ones?
Yes. I don't, a couple of the clients that I've had, have had chronic pain and really not been able to get past that. We've done some with CBD and had some limited success with that, but I think like you said, I think it's really a balancing act of making sure that you're getting sleep still, because we don't want to be adding to that, adding to the stress of the body by not honoring that sleep that's really necessary in order for them to heal. So we really look for a combination of things. And sometimes that's enzyme therapy. Sometimes that's, I've had a couple that have done the cryogenic type of things to get some success. So all different, modalities for sure. But I do think, you're absolutely right. Pain is a real issue at night. Yeah.
And when you're tired, it gets worse. So we know that. I'm not that familiar with cryogenic. I thought that was when you freeze yourself when you're going to die and you unfreeze later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's supposed to help with bringing down inflammation for a lot of people. And so
coldness.
Cold therapy. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, again, just in terms of choices, is yoga, Tai Chi, Epsom salt baths, a walk in the moonlight. But I just think getting the mind in a relatively quiet place and getting the heart and the gut in a comfortable place, because the mind can really do tricks. And as we get out of our mind into our hearts, we shift our energetic pattern. And
absolutely.
Ground into our bodies. Wherever we put our attention is where blood flows, and that's how healing happens. And sometimes these disturbances are calling for blood flow and chemical, release, toxic release and nourishment to come. So I do suggest nighttime herbs a lot. Herbs rather than supplements. I mean, again, I think they're all useful, but there's something about a botanical that it's broad-based. And it's not just trying to hit one system. It generally tends to affect many systems. And also aromatherapy with the diffuser in the room.
Yes, great one.
You know what I'm saying? These things are, empirical. With this kind of recognition that sleep is not always easy, but sometimes it works, If you have a good day and you have a good evening, you might have a good sleep. If you have a bad day and a bad evening and you watch bad TV,
not so good. Right.
So too much news is certainly a problem.
Isn't it? Yes.
And too much shoot 'em up is certainly a problem, because these images, impressions affect us on a fairly deep level.
Yeah, very interesting. And interesting too to see kind of the recall that you have then in your dreams oftentimes, following those things. And so I do think you're absolutely right. That's something that, we need to be really cognizant of, that, our surroundings at night need to be peaceful and relaxing. And, the more we can do to make it that way, using, getting disturbances out of the bedroom too. Sometimes I have a couple of dogs that like to come in and make a ruckus at night, or curl up next to you or whatever. So, kind of thinking along those lines of what can I do in order to make my cave, just as comfortable as I can to get a good night of rest.
I got one more.
Sure.
I call this teddy bear or pillow therapy. I find that people who are alone and lonely and restless are really comforted by having something to hold. It makes sense. We're tactile creatures. We're creatures who want to feel safe and loving. And so I have a nice wife. But I do have friends who don't. And I go literally get the big full body pillow and wrap up around it. Or find, a creature that you love and then express that. And that can be really quite helpful with sleep.
That's great.
Because there's many reasons or many kinds of things that come out at night, At night is when it all comes out.
Well, and maybe on the maybe to add to that a little bit, castor oil packs. I found a lot of the women that I treat and use a castor oil pack with, they love it. I mean, it's something about kind of being hugged, and putting them into that parasympathetic to kind of relax. That's a really nice tool for a lot of people. And the more I can get somebody to do that, the more I feel like, we're getting somewhere. It's that same kind of thing, I think, that gives them that, added relaxation in a hug kind of way.
No, it's really big. The hug is really big.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes you have to hug yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So, friends, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being patient as we got organized here. Big thanks to Britt. Very helpful.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to doing more programs, Britt.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ed.
All the
Have a
best.
great night.
All right. Bye-bye. Sleep well.